Welcome to the Attack the Rack podcast. I am your host, Curtis Leslie, and you are tuning in to the number one rated podcast on the planet by people that rated it number one. All right, we are back with another interview on the podcast today. Today we are interviewing basketball coach Trent Windemuller. Trent is currently a varsity boys assistant coach at Holland High School in West Michigan. Trent is a young coach. Trent also has a ton of experience for his young age. He has coached at multiple high schools. He has coached AAU. He has coached collegiate basketball. And we are going to talk today with him about shooting the basketball. All right, folks, before we get started today, I want you to take a second. I want you to look around your house. Do you see a Christmas tree in your house? If you do not, you need to go get a Christmas tree. Christmas Trees has been a long-time sponsor of our program here. Want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Christmas Trees. They brighten up your home, bring tons of extra joy during the holiday season. You still have about 8 days until Christmas. Plenty of time to go out and get a Christmas tree. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Attack the Rack podcast. Today we got a special guest, Trent Windemuller. He's a varsity boys basketball assistant at Holland High School here in West Michigan. Trent, welcome to the Get to Two Media Studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, good to have you. Good to have you. Trent, saw your game last night. You guys played at West Ottawa. Didn't quite turn out probably the way you were hoping.
I thought last night was a little tough for us. We've been on a NBA type schedule since Thanksgiving. We're gonna have 6 games in before Christmas break. Last night was a little different than what I expected. We turned the ball over a lot. And we just got to find a way to get more physical inside and use that physicality to our strengths.
And Trent, as we're sitting here talking, in the background here, we've got a different Holland West Ottawa game playing here. This is from 1994-1995. Better outcome for the Dutch that night. They were victorious. But when I watched this, first of all, your dad, Coach Steve Windemuller, he was an assistant coach for Holland High School at that time. Again, this is 1994, 1995. Trent, how old were you then?
I was 2 years old.
Okay.
So I was still really young.
Yes. All right, so that makes me feel quite old. I was a freshman, so I was on the freshman team at Holland High School that year. But as I watch this and I think about, just the fact that, you guys played each other last night, Holland West Ottawa. You are coaching for Holland now as an assistant coach. You look at this game we're watching right now, you've got your dad who is an assistant for Holland High School. And then you look at some of the other people involved in this game, and you look at kind of the network and the tree that, almost, 25, 30 years later, the connections. You've got Joe Davilar here playing for Holland High School. His son Adam is now a sophomore on your team. You've got Ryan Klingler playing in this game. He was a junior. He was a former guest on the podcast, coaching at Hope College now. He coached at Holland. He coached at West Ottawa. West Ottawa's coach, Paul Chapman, in this game. Paul Chapman's coaching West Ottawa. He coached at Holland. He's now back coaching girls basketball
at West Ottawa. I believe Jared Riddell would have been a sophomore. I don't know if he was on. I haven't seen him coming. I don't know if he was on the varsity or the JV this year. He now varsity coach at West Ottawa. Myself, I was a freshman on the Holland team this year. I've coached at Holland. I've coached at West Ottawa. Just the fallout from this, when you watch this, and the network and the tree is pretty crazy and pretty cool too.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty amazing that there's that many people that are still around making an impact in the city of Holland. And even though Holland West Ottawa is a pretty big rivalry, it just shows that even if whatever type of coaching that you're into it's gonna be looked at as a success, no matter if you're at Holland or West Ottawa. So it's pretty cool to see that I'm able to coach some kids of the players in that game now.
Yeah. Well, and too, Dan Van Hecken, he graduated the year prior to this. He played for Coach Worley when Coach Worley was the JV coach at Holland, and now he's got two boys playing for you now at Holland. So it's another connection. It's pretty cool.
Yep, and we had the third one last year as well. So
yep, Jackson, who's now graduated. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing when you look at it that way.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Trent, let's kind of we're gonna talk a lot about shooting today. Trent was a phenomenal shooter in his day playing at Holland High School, and we're gonna talk to Trent about how he developed his shot. But before we kind of dive into that topic today, Trent, let's talk a little bit more about your playing history. You played at Holland High School. 3-year player.
3 years. Yeah.
Okay, so
my sophomore year I got pulled up.
Okay, and your coach was?
My father.
Your father, Steve Windemuller. All right, so talk a little bit about your 3 years playing at Holland High School.
It was we had 3 pretty successful years. My sophomore year, my freshman year, I was fortunate enough to play for Paul Chapman on the JVs, and we were pretty successful there. And my sophomore year, I got pulled up to varsity and had a pretty good year. I was mainly just a catch and shoot because we had pretty skilled players around, and we ended up winning a district that year at Zeeland East. My junior year was a pretty solid year. I don't actually remember how far we got. I think we lost in the second round of districts to Hudsonville, I think, if I recall correctly. And then my senior year was a little more rough. We weren't as much of a powerhouse. It was me and Dante Hawkins and Coriante with a couple football guys, Nathan Ricketts, Jake Hellman, Corey Willis. And we ended up losing to 20-0 Zeeland East in the first round of districts.
Okay.
And first game of my career I fouled out of was my senior year district game.
Oh,
so it was a little sour ending, but
yeah, that was one heck of a Zeeland East team. They ended up losing in the state finals that year.
Yeah, they were very good.
So you lost to quite a team. All right, and then from there, what was next?
I went and played college ball at Millikin University in Decatur, Illinois. Played one full season there. It was kind of like the coach cleared house, and he wanted to bring in a bunch of guys to kind of build something, which I was pretty interested in.
Yep.
Didn't work out the way I expected. After going into my sophomore year, tore my rotator cuff, and that kind of put me out. And so I ended up stepping away from college hoops. And in college, I started coaching high school basketball locally in Decatur at St. Teresa High School, where I was helping out the varsity for my first year, and we lost in the state finals.
Really?
At Bradley. And then the following year, they asked me to do their freshman boys. So I did their freshman boys. It was a very skilled group. I believe we were 16-4 that year.
Okay.
So that was pretty enjoyable. It's always nice to have some victories.
Well, Trent, one thing that's different about you and the previous guests that I had on the show, all guys that are kind of around my age, a couple of them who I had actually coached with. You come from a different era. You're 15 years or so younger than us. Those guys, I know their history already. With you, I really don't, and that's why I find this interview quite interesting. I had no idea that you coached high school basketball in Illinois while you were in college and went to a state championship.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was pretty sweet. We had some really good players. It was a smaller school, smaller Catholic school, but just the success of that program that they had and that run that we made was pretty impressive. Our star player was Christian Williams. His freshman year, he went to Iowa, and then he ended up transferring to Indiana State, I believe.
Okay.
And then ended up finishing his career at Indiana State. So we were blessed with a 6'7" slashing wing, and then we had some spot up shooters. And you had a pretty good point guard to that, and that's a pretty good group.
All right. So before we get into a little bit more of your coaching history and how you got from that point to where you are now, let's go back. Something pretty fascinating about your playing career was that your head coach was your father. I'm sure there's some positives, there's some negatives to that. Overall, before we maybe talk about it a little bit deeper, overall, what was that experience like?
At first, I guess growing up at my middle school days, I was always in the gym, and I didn't really focus, I guess, on trying to become like a great basketball player. And then I think it was just like one day on a ride home with him or something, he was like, if you want to play varsity basketball someday, like you're really going to have to put in a bunch of time and to get better, so it doesn't look as bad when you're on the varsity team playing and I'm the coach. So it was, but it was a lot of work. During those I think that's when I really started to figure it out, was probably 8th grade. It was like I could potentially be a pretty good player. So I spent a ton of time in the gym, which was a huge perk of having my dad as a coach, was the gym access. I could get in whenever I wanted. And that was really nice. And that was when they started coming out with the shooting guns and all the easy rebounding stuff, so you didn't have to just go chase your ball around. So I would probably get in 6 days a week and shoot at least 500 every time I got in there. And it was a variation of catch and shoot, pull-ups, and some floaters in there. But it really helped me grow my game. But if I could focus on one thing differently, it probably would have been ball handling, because I wasn't able to put it on the ground effectively probably till college.
Yeah. Back to having your dad as a head coach, what do you think was, you mentioned gym access. That is a huge positive. Any other kind of cool things about it, positive things about it?
Positive things would be gym access for sure was great. Just having him, like, he always had my back, and there was moments obviously where it wasn't as sweet as it was all chopped up to be, just because of that. Like, he's still my dad, but when I'm on the court, he's my coach. So that made it a little, and I think it took a little bit to kind of get used to, just that separation of coach versus dad. And it ended up being not that bad. I mean, we drove separately to practice when I was able to drive. Dinners were a little quiet during the season.
I'm sure.
I had to take a different type of role as well. I try to think that I was the leader of the team and lead by example, being in the weight room, showing up to everything, just trying to bring guys along with me. And we got fortunate enough to get Coriante DeBerry in 7th grade, I believe. And then after 7th grade, he was like my guy, like almost like my project. Like, this is the dude that's going to help us really become a pretty good team in high school. And I think if you asked him, he would probably think the same thing, and he probably wished that he put in a little more work than he did. But there was just the having him around constantly was really nice, and you don't really think about it till it's over. So like once I got to college, it was a little different coaching style, different practices, different type of criticism and praise. So that was a little bit different. But overall, I'd say it was a good experience having him as the coach.
Yeah. What? How about a couple negatives to that? Having your dad as your head coach.
Just I think it got to the point to where I would, even if where there was like, if I were to make mistakes, or even if the mistake wasn't necessarily my fault, like I'm getting the grunt of it just because he knew I was able to handle it, rather than having another kid getting yelled at or whatever, and have them kind of shut down and not play to their potential. So I took a lot of the grunt of just some of the mistakes that happened on the court, and he had high expectations of me and the leadership that I had on the court when I was playing, to be able to control some of those things. And there was moments where I got to the point to where I could look at him like dead in the eyes, and it would just go in one ear and right out the other. So that was, I don't even know if that's a skill or if that's just enough of hearing something over and over to where I could almost block it out or just not let it affect me as much. But the mental toughness part is a huge key these days, I believe, to players and even coaching. You got to be mentally tough. When things don't go your way, you can't just shut down and roll over. It's just that constant fight, and he pretty much engraved that in me to where like failure wasn't really acceptable, and you always had to just go out there and bust your butt and get the job done.
Yeah, and another connection. Trent, when he was playing for Holland High School, his dad, Steve Windemuller, was the head coach. When I played at Holland High School, Coach Windemuller was our assistant coach. So, and I bet you. So I kind of look at it too, and we all, thought the world of your dad, all of us players then. But it's a little bit different because then he was an assistant coach, and I can speak to this. You probably can too as an assistant, or you've been a head coach, you've been an assistant coach. I also have. When you're the assistant coach, you're kind of the good cop, and I think that players really gravitate towards the assistants. So yeah, when we were playing for Holland High School, Coach Windemuller was again the assistant coach, kind of that good cop, fun guy. Probably a different experience for you, whether you're his son or not, as a head coach. Then you're kind of the bad cop. You have been both a head coach and an assistant coach. Is one of those two roles that you feel like you gravitate towards more at this point?
Right now, I would say I'm more of a good cop, but I still have those high expectations of our guys. I think we have a lot more potential than some of our guys are really putting out there, and I think just constant effort and you just gotta leave it all out there on the floor. Like if there's after the game, if you're able to just go out there and play another 3 quarters, you clearly didn't play hard enough. So I just think that pushing yourself mentally and physically to that point to where you think you can't go any farther, and then you can just push past it mentally. I think that's a huge part that we're trying to get our guys to understand. And you can look at it right now. This year, we're very young. Our squad is a very young team. Only 3 seniors and 5 juniors, 2 sophomores, 2 freshmen. So we're just trying to build that mentality of mental toughness and pushing yourself to that point of not quite exhaustion, but the point of like where you finish a game and you left it all out on the floor and there's nothing else that you could do about it. Like that's kind of what we're trying to get back to.
Sure.
I am a big relationship guy though. I love connecting with the guys, talking with them, just shooting it with them, and I think that's a big part of it as well. You got to earn that trust and that belief of what you're doing is correct, and that if they can buy into what you're preaching, it goes a long way.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, whether you're a head coach, assistant coach, relationship building is probably the, if not number one, it's one of the top part or aspects of being a coach is relationship building. Again, whether you're a head coach or an assistant coach, sometimes again players will maybe gravitate more towards you, being an assistant coach. But yeah, either way, relationship building is number one probably, whether you're a head coach or an assistant coach. Another, again, we kind of keep jumping ahead a little bit. I want to get back to your playing days. You also played AAU for a club here in West Michigan called the West Michigan Lakers.
Yep.
How was that experience for you?
That might have been the best basketball experience that I've ever had, and I don't know if it was partially because it made my job of shooting the basketball a lot easier, being around that many skilled players. And then it was always the big rivalry of West Michigan Lakers and Grand Rapids Storm. And I think prior to my West Michigan Lakers days, it was heavily dominated by the GR Storm. And we started making the comeback probably my 16s year, to where we started really getting some players, and we were really competing with those guys. And then my 17s year, we ended up getting a few of the Storm guys. Kevin Badger, who was the point guard at Godwin, very good player. And then we ended up getting Jordan Daly, who was a very good player at Grand Rapids Christian, ended up playing at Calvin. And then we had Kayvon Frazier, who was a very good athlete, very good player, went to Grand Rapids Christian as well, and ended up getting drafted by the Cowboys. Wow. So we were blessed with some really good talent there. Also battling the Wes Leonard stuff and that whole thing, with Wes passing that year. It felt like we played 6-on-5 a lot. I know it sounds kind of, I don't know what the word for it is, cliche, but you could tell there was something different going on that year. Absolutely. And I mean, we won 7 tournaments, I believe.
Wow.
And we beat teams that if you saw that team, you would have been like, there's no chance you're going to win. I mean, 7 D1 guys on one team, and you got a bunch of D3 dudes going out there and beating you by 25. It makes it a little different, So Matt Costello played at Michigan State. Jared Klein played at Western Michigan. And there was a couple other dudes that were all on that team, and we rolled them. Coriante played really well. We just clicked. And it wasn't even just ISO basketball. It was still team basketball, just solid motion, a bunch of guys with high IQs, and we just found ways to get it done.
Yeah.
And it was a very impressive run. I believe we were 49-8.
Wow.
That spring and summer. And then the last tournament we went and played in Vegas at the Super 64. And we ended up playing first round. We played Andre Drummond and Chris Dunn first round in Vegas. And it was the only AAU game I've ever been in where we had announcers. And it was a full packed gym. It was probably like 3,000 people.
For an AAU game?
For an AAU game, yep.
Wow.
So one side, it kind of looked like the Dome, honestly. But it had, one side was all college coaches, and the other side was all just fans that were there to watch basketball. And we had a belief that we could win, but they had another gear. that we've never seen before. So I mean, we kept it around like 10 to 12 majority of the game, and then they decided to turn it on a little bit. I think it ended up being about 25 or so. But I mean, we went out there and battled and competed, and we did what we could, and it was a pretty sweet experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's so much debate back and forth about, in fact, we've got into that on the podcast so far, the benefits or negatives to AAU basketball, and it sounds like you had an incredible experience, all positive. And again, back to the kind of the age gap, when myself and not that I was a caliber player that would have even played AAU, but back when myself and the other guys we've had on the program were in high school, AAU was totally different then. Only the elite of the elite played AAU. There was probably a handful of teams in the entire state of Michigan, whereas now there's a handful of teams in every community in the state of Michigan.
Yep.
So it was a lot different back then than it is now. And I think that, one thing we've talked about here on the program pretty much every episode is the positives and negatives of AAU basketball. Again, you had an incredibly positive experience, but, what are your thoughts on the state of AAU basketball? Now that you're coaching, in school basketball, do you see the prominence of AAU affecting your role as the high school coach now?
I think, AAU is a completely different style of. I guess it depends what type of team you're on too. If you're on like a super skilled team, it's probably going to be more isolation, dribble drive, a little more standing around. But it is a very high paced, up and down game, more transition. But if you have a good AAU coach, they're going to teach you the right things, and it's always good to hear it from a different perspective as well, instead of always hearing it from the same person. I push our guys to play AAU just because of repetition. You get more game time, you get used to game speed, and I think it helps. If you do it the right way, I think it helps build your basketball IQ up. But I think it's harder for kids these days to think about basketball as like a math equation. Like reading defender, how to handle screens, and what do they do if they switch, and those types of things. And that's like a big teaching, and that takes a lot of time as well as teaching guys to recognize what your defender's doing, or if someone's close, like if you hit a couple threes and then they fly at you, like you should probably shot fake and go by them. So I think AAU is still good for the most part. I look at it as just more playing experience and more game time under your belt, which should only help you get better long term.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're every coach we've had on the program has no issues with AAU at all. The more you play, the better you're going to get. The problem that I see, and a problem that we've talked about with previous episodes in the program, is that you can't just play AAU and think you're going to get better. It needs to be in addition to spending time on your own in the gym, back with your high school coach, doing workouts, working on your shooting, working on your ball handling, because, as we've said a handful of times now on the program, if you go to an AAU tournament, you spend an entire weekend, you play 5 games, you maybe get up 30 or 40 shots in an entire weekend. Whereas if you go to the gym on any day of the week for an hour, you're going to get up a few hundred shots.
For sure.
So there needs to be a balance. And I couldn't agree with you more. Everything you're talking about, with the speed and the IQ and everything like that, you can gain from playing the game. It's super important. And like I said back when myself and some of these other coaches we've had, were growing up, and there wasn't the AAU option. You know, we still played all the time, whether it was 3-on-3 in the driveway, 5-on-5 at the park. Nowadays, you don't really see that, but kids are still playing 5-on-5 because of the accessibility of joining an AAU club. So, yeah, it just there's just got to be a balance.
Yeah, and I also think too is like if you get a bunch of your guys that all play together, it's probably not as good as it should be because they're so used to just playing against each other. And I think one of the greatest ways to learn the game is playing people who are older than you, playing people you've never played with before.
Yep.
Getting used to different people's personalities, the way people play, adapting to kind of your surroundings. Even if you just go to the park and ask the dudes that are playing if you can get next game, like it's going to make you a better player that way. And I think a lot of kids these days need to understand that. I think most of your growth can come from a lot of selfishness of your workouts and your work ethic and how you prepare to get better. And it's not just going to come by playing pickup 3-on-3 with your teammates, because then it kind of turns into not like a joke, but it's they're not going to take it as serious, and it's not going to be as competitive as it should be. And then when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, then how much better are you really getting playing pickup 3-on-3 or 5-on-5 with the same guys that you play in gym class with? So and that's another part of AAU as well, right? So you're playing with a bunch of different dudes all over the area that you might know, and that's what also makes it fun too, because you can see them during the year with your high school team, and if that doesn't feel you, then there's something wrong. Because obviously you want to go beat those guys that you played with all summer and still keep that friendship and relationship with them after the game.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come right back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. And we are back.
All right, so before we get into the main topic here, shooting the basketball, let's finish up with, how you got to where you're at now. You mentioned while you were in college, you coached some high school, you're a varsity assistant, you were a freshman coach. From that point to now, how did you get to now where you are the varsity boys assistant coach at Holland High School?
So my sophomore year, I did the freshman boys in Decatur. I did varsity. I helped out with varsity that year. The following year, my junior year, I helped out with the freshman boys, did freshman boys. And that was the most difficult because we had one gym for the whole school, all levels, boys and girls. So I would wake up for 6 a.m. practice pretty much every day and drive to the high school at 6 a.m., practice, come back, and then I still had my full day of classes and all the extra stuff that college offers you. So that was an interesting balance to get into. After I graduated college, I was fortunate enough to go work for Coach Marks at University of St. Francis, where I was an assistant coach at University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois.
St. Francis is a NCAA D3, NAIA?
They are NAIA.
Okay.
They are NAIA, and that was a good experience for me. It didn't pay great, which became more of an issue than I expected, just because you need to have some sort of income especially when you're by yourself. You got to have some sort of income to stabilize you and keep you up a little bit. So I did that for 2 years. That was a true test of myself, I guess you could say. Ton of hours in the office, cutting film, grading scouts, recruiting, all the things that come with college coaching, sleeping in the office. waking up for the next morning because you got morning practice or weights or whatever. So that was a true test for me, and I didn't think it was going to suit my lifestyle the way I wanted to. I didn't want to be the guy that's constantly moving around the country and coaching somewhere for 2 years and bouncing around and not really sure where you truly stick. And also my family being in Holland as well keeps me around. My sister's in Illinois currently, but mom and dad are still in Holland, and I have that love for Holland High still, and I want to bring back that success that Holland is really known for.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what brought me back to Holland. And I was fortunate enough to Corey Walters hit me up and asked if I was interested in coaching, and he helped me end up getting a job at a special education school in Holland as well, where I'm still currently working. Long-term goal probably to get back. I would love to get to the high school. I want to have more of an impact on kids in the school, more than just practicing games. I thought that was one of the most difficult things for me with my freshman boys last year. Was the only time I saw them was practice and games, and made it hard to kind of check up on them during the day, make sure they're in class, doing the right things, and I kind of want to make that a priority probably in the next 3 or 4 years.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned last year the freshman coach at Holland High School. Corey Walters was the varsity boys coach at Holland High School last year. We had him a couple episodes ago. He now is an assistant coach at Zeeland West High School in West Michigan. Trent and I, as soon as we get done with our little chat here, we are heading out to the swamp, they call it, at Zeeland West High School, and we're going to watch Zeeland West High School take on the Maroons of Holland Christian. So another thing I'm curious to know, last year was your first year coaching at Holland High School, head coach Corey Walters. Your second year, you've got a brand new head coach now at Holland High School. And now you have a different role too. You're the assistant coach with the varsity. What was that? What was that like, having one coach 1 year, and then all of a sudden you got a new coach?
I wasn't around the varsity guys as much last year. Practice times were a little different and our schedules were a little different. So it made it a little more difficult to be around, but I tried to help him as much as possible, especially with in-game stuff. I'll always say what's on my mind on the bench, and if they like it, then they take it. If they don't like it, then brush it off. And that's kind of what I learned coaching college was you can't just be a yes man. You gotta, if you see something, say something, and if they adjust to it, fine. If not, fine. You just got to roll with it.
Right.
So I thought Corey took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes of the high school coaching scene, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the freshman boys I had last year. Didn't win as many games as we could, but it's more about making them better men in the future, I believe, and just helping them grow and be successful more than just basketball. And now this year with the new coach, Mason Tiley, I really enjoy him. Young guy, he's younger than me. And I think he did some GA stuff at the D2 level, I believe, prior to getting the Holland job. And I knew him prior. I helped coach West Michigan Lakers, I think my senior year of high school or early college when I came home for a summer, and he was on one of the teams. So we kind of had we knew who each other were. And
that's funny you mention that, because I coached him when he was with the Lakers 16s.
Yeah, so we had some sort of connection prior to him getting there. So when I saw that he got hired, I was like, "Oh, sweet! Like that's a good hire." I thought Corey did a great job with our guys, and he loved being at Holland. But I do like where we're at right now. We just got to keep that fire and that motivation for our guys to continue to get better. over the next 4 years.
All right, let's get into some shooting.
All right.
All right, let's get into shooting. Trent, you and I have something in common. We are both phenomenal shooters. The problem I had, Trent, was I had no other skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a good ball handler. I was not a good passer. I could not guard anybody, but I could shoot the basketball, and that's, I believe, probably the reason I continued to have a spot on the team. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I don't think I myself, maybe had some natural shooting ability, but I put in a ton of time shooting. Maybe should have spent a little bit more time trying to develop some other skill sets, but I spent hours in the driveway. I was, one hand form shots. We called them snappers back then. How did you get to that point where you were, you're probably one of the better shooters, certainly Holland High School's had. How'd you get there?
Ton of shots. Also, a perk of that was my father being the coach, so I could get in whenever I wanted. But it starts with, it's boring, right? But it's form shots, right? Get the right form, set it, follow through. It's always the one I heard was beef, balance, eyes, elbow, follow through. And that's kind of what I focused on. Was my main focus right away, obviously, was just catch and shoot, free throws, getting consistent with those. And then as I got older and stronger, I could start backing it up. So middle school, I was right on the 3 line, just catch and shoot, not off the bounce or anything like that. As I got older and stronger, I was able to move it back a little bit and grow my game that way. But it was a ton of repetition. I think a lot of it too has to do with footwork and timing. You got to be able to time up passes. You got to be able to get your feet right. Either you're a 2-foot hop guy, or you're a 1-2 step. And I was able to do both, which I thought helped me be able to get shots off quicker. Because in high school it was all box and one or face guards or whatever, so I had to find other ways to get open, which is why I thought having a good basketball IQ really helps that out. And I was able to, not being the most athletic guy in the world, I was able to find ways to get separation and find ways to get open, even just off relocating. You move up the floor a couple feet, or you move towards the corner a couple feet. That's all you need to be able to get a shot off. And I think form doesn't really, I think it has some to do with it, but you've seen some guys with some nasty forms.
Absolutely.
That are still very consistent shooters. And a lot of it is game speed repetition. You have to catch and shoot like you're catching and shooting in a game. And you can't always just catch and then look at it and find the laces and then fire it up. You got to be able to catch, find, and turn the ball to find the laces. I was always a guy that every time I caught it, I would find the laces. That way, every time it left my hand, I would know. I got to the point to where I would know if it was going in, if it was short, or if it was long. And that was just based off repetition, I believe. So I got to the point to where right when it left my hand, I would know what the result was going to be. And that sometimes it's a really good feeling, especially if you're feeling it that night, and that night's one of your nights where whenever it leaves your hand, it goes in. But I think my later high school years, I started developing more, be able to get downhill. My ball handling wasn't the greatest, but it was good enough to get me by, to get from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. Straight line driver. It wasn't anything flashy. I also think part of that had to do with me not wanting to make mistakes. I never wanted to make mistakes during the game. I always wanted to be perfect. So that was part of shooting as well. You want every rep to be perfect, every shot to be perfect. and that was just a big part of how I played. Then like defensively, I wasn't the quickest. I wasn't a great on-ball defender, but my IQ helped me with team defense. I would like to think I was a pretty good team defender. Just rotating the spots. Anticipation is huge. Just trying to guess where, anticipating that next pass, or if they're going to throw a post entry and you can jump it, or taking charges, which is a lost art in our game. I told my kids the other day, I said, I might pay you to take charges. So we're trying to I think key repetition is big for shooting. You got to shoot like you're shooting in the game. You can't give yourself a ton of time. You only have a couple seconds to let that thing fly. So I think just catch and shoot release, having your feet ready, timing, time up a catch, know where the pass is coming from. I was always told, show your hands and get your butt down. That was what I lived by, and I still tell my kids that every day.
Yeah, and the state of the game of basketball has changed, migrated over the years to now. Shooting is super important, such a huge part of the game.
You can thank Curry for a lot of that too.
Absolutely.
I think the NBA has put a pretty big impact on the way the game has evolved over the years. Whereas kids shooting 35-footers,
right?
But they can't make a free throw.
You know, what's interesting too is some people will say, "Oh, the style play of Steph Curry has made the game more exciting, or made the game better because it's fun to watch outside shooting."
But then you also need to think how much time he's put in to be able to shoot the shots that he shoots.
Yes.
To where it's not like a kid who comes in and shoots 50 shots a day, pulling from 35.
Yeah, and then that's the other argument is he's made the game worse because now everyone wants to do what he does, but yet they haven't put in near the amount of time to be able to do what he does. All right, so before we move on, you got a couple favorite shooting drills?
Favorite shooting drills. W shooting.
Okay.
That was always one of my favorite shooting drills. Start at half court, right wing, run in, catch and shoot, back to half court, back to the top, catch and shoot, back to the other wing. So you make that W, and you go through twice. Yeah. Try to make 6, and that was always one of my favorites. And then there was another tough one. It was just regular pyramid shooting, starting the baseline, back pedal to the 3, plant, try not to false step, elbow to elbow, shoot, back to baseline, back pedal. So it was pyramid, make 3, make 5, make 7, make 9, go up as high as you think you can handle. I think we got to 11 at one point, and you might think it's easy just talking about it, but that back pedal, that will really get you going, and it forces you to use your legs. And show your hands, and just all the basic shooting steps, right? Timing up the catch, get your feet right, follow through. So I really enjoy that one as well. A shooting game that I liked was 42. Okay. 7 spots on the floor. You get a 3 at each spot. You get a pull-up jumper at each spot, and you get a layup. Layups being 1, pull-up jumpers being 2, the 3s being 3. Perfect score is 42. I believe I got 38 at one point, I think. I never was able to get a perfect 42. I might have to start trying to do that again.
Yeah, that'd be a great goal for you.
Yeah. My old man goal is to get a perfect 42. That'd be pretty sweet.
All right, Trent. Well, I'm looking at the clock here. We got to get out to this Zeeland West Holland Christian game. Again, thank you so much for joining us. But before we do head out, we got a few questions we like to end the program with. First one being, let us know your 5 favorite basketball players, not greatest players. Don't even have to be NBA players. We're talking favorite players. Your 5 favorite players.
I would say my 5 favorite players Number 1, or should I start at 5?
Again, it doesn't have to be in any order.
All
if
right.
you have them ranked,
Any
that's
order.
totally fine.
Let's go any order.
Okay.
Any order. Let's go with Ray Allen. Incredible shooter. Quick release. Just the left it's a kind of a funky shot. It was so consistent. It was more of like a slingshot, but he could shoot it. So I always looked up to him and watched his style and try to learn how to just catch and go up right away, no second guessing. And I would say another one, Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver was a big 1-2 step guy, so I watched him a lot to kind of get that footwork down. He always came in ready, low hands, low butt, come in 1-2 step, let it fly. UConn Kemba Walker was another one. He was a great point guard. Really handled the rock well, made big time shots. Just cold blooded. He was really good in college. Another one would be Syracuse Carmelo Anthony. That mid range game, when mid range was allowed, now teams only do threes and layups. So it's the mid range game has kind of gone away. But I love Melo's mid range, his post up stuff. Guards, please don't forget to work on post work because it will help you. So Syracuse, Carmelo, he was a dog. And number 1 for sure is J.J. Redick at Duke.
Okay.
He was flat out he could stroke it. And that was like kind of who I wanted to be, was a little bit of J.J. Redick. And just the way the form was silky. He had a little swagger to him. Wasn't the greatest defender in the world, but he made it work. And I think that's a big part of it as well. It's just effort. On defense, you just need to put in effort, and good results will happen. And JJ was just one of those dead 3 shooters, and he developed as he got in the NBA more. But he was a really great shooter in Duke, and they were loaded that year too. So he was the main guy that I really, really enjoyed watching.
All right. Next, let's get your well, it doesn't necessarily have to be 5. That can be a little bit difficult to come up with. How about 3 to 5 of your favorite basketball movies?
Favorite basketball movies, and I'm going to order these.
Okay.
So we're going to go number 4. I only have 4. Love and Basketball. Number 3 would be Hurricane Season. Number 2 would be Hoosiers, and number 1 would be Coach Carter. I think Coach Carter is just an all-time great basketball movie.
Yep.
And you can kind of relate to it just with the types of the type of environment and the style and those types of things. When I was in college, I could relate to that a little bit more. So I really enjoyed that movie.
All right. And then lastly, we like to end the program with a bonus question specific to the person we're talking to. Trent, I know you are a huge shoe fan. I believe the kids call them sneakerheads. I believe you are one of those.
Yes. Yep.
How about 5 of your favorite all-time shoes?
5 all-time shoes. Let's see. I would have to go no specific order.
Yep.
Off-white Nike Dunks. I have a pair of the red and white ones. Might have to bust those out this year. Those are very clean, very nice shoe. Another one would be a Travis Scott Low 1 Nike. Those were a beautiful shoe, well made, and just very clean look. Brown with a little hunter green in them was nice. And Trophy Room 5s. I bought 2 pairs of Trophy Room 5s off StockX, and it was like a light blue suede shoe, Jordan 5, that Jordan's son, it was like Jordan's son's creation for his store that he opened, the Trophy Room store. So I had 2 pairs of those, never wore them. I sold them, so I do not have them, but they were up there for top 5. And then there was another one, a Strange Love Nike Dunk. It was like a like a Valentine's Day edition Nike Dunk, pink and red. I could never wear them, can't pull it off, but it was a beautiful shoe. It was a very beautiful shoe. And last but not least, Jordan 1 Chicago's, the red and white Chicago's, Jordan 1 High are probably the top of the list for me.
All right, great list, Trent. Great list. Great discussion today. Can't thank you enough for joining the program. Absolutely would love to have you back, talk more basketball. Love to have your father on the program. Probably one of the certainly one of the most successful coaches our area has seen when it comes to boys basketball. Again, he was an assistant coach when I played. Big Coach Windy fan, been a mentor. Love to get him on the program. If this is something that's up his alley, that's the question.
Yeah, that's gonna be the true test. I think you might be able to get him though.
And then but love to have you back, Trent. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. I know basketball season is super busy. But yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share.